Okay, well, thanks for inviting me here. And I think dialogue like this is always very useful. I think the important thing in the topic that we're discussing today is the word less relevant. It's clear that anything that exists within a society is by definition relevant to that society. What we're discussing here is whether religion in a modern society is less relevant than it used to be. And to a certain extent, that's a question of that's answered by observation rather than by theology or philosophy. It's a question of looking at society and asking, is religion more or less relevant to the society that we live in than it used to be in the past? I'm going to suggest three things: that it's less relevant to our understanding of reality, that it's less relevant to our understanding of morality, and that it's generally less relevant in a practical sense in terms of how we run our society. In terms of understanding of reality and the influence of religion on it, every generation we learn more about how the universe operates. Every generation, the parts that we don't yet understand, some people attribute the cause to gods of one sort or another. And every generation we shift more and more explanations from the category of, well, God was responsible for that, to the category of, we now understand how it happened naturally. And you don't get things going in the opposite direction. It's an unrelenting stream of previously religious explanations being overtaken by naturalistic scientific explanations. In terms of the universe itself, the Big Bang is the most reliable explanation for how our universe developed from immediately after it began. The scientific method generally has proven more reliable than theology in terms of understanding how the universe operates. We in terms of we meaning humans, initially thought that the heavens were above the earth, and then we thought that the earth was static and that everything else circled around the earth. And then we realised that thought that the sun was static and the earth revolved around the sun, then realised that it is gravity that holds all of the planets in orbit, that the sun isn't even in the centre of our galaxy, that our galaxy is just one of certainly over 100 billion galaxies in the observable universe, each of which has more than 100 billion stars like our sun, and each of which has innumerable planets circling. And the more we understand about that, the more we understand about the scale of the universe, information that we've got scientifically, not from either philosophy or theology, the more we understand about the scale of the universe, the less credible it is to maintain that it was all created for the benefit of human beings on the planet Earth in this particular galaxy out of hundreds of billions of galaxies. The more it seems likely that we as humans, and indeed every species that have lived on the planet Earth, are just one small part of a vastly expanding universe. And when we use the word universe in this context, there may be more universes. We're constantly finding out scientifically, as we go, both at a large scale and a small scale, that reality is far vaster than science had found it to be in the past, and certainly far vaster and far less parochial than religion used to believe and used to claim that that the universe or the earth and the heavens, as it would have been seen in those days, are. In terms of what happened before the Big Bang, the answer is we don't know. Religious people as with everything up to now, religious people still feel back that by saying, well, it must have been a god. But given the unrelenting sequence of previously religious or supernatural explanations for reality being overtaken by scientific explanations, there's no reason to believe that when we do find out what happened before the Big Bang, there's no reason to believe that it won't be a natural explanation, that whatever it is. Now, there are various speculations in the scientific community about what it might be. But the key distinction between those speculations and religious speculations is that those speculations are based on following the evidence. They're not based on making up something and then trying to essentially crowbar the evidence of reality into the answer that you have already come up with. In particular, there's no justification to suggest that whatever may have been the cause of the Big Bang, and even cause is kind of a strange word to use, because at subatomic quantum level, the laws of physics and cause and effect are different than they are when things come together to form sort of medium-sized objects. But with regards to whatever you may claim may have caused it, there's certainly no pathway from saying that something caused it to saying that it was any particular variation of a religious deity, whether that's the Abrahamic God or any other variation of gods. There's simply no pathway from saying, well, something must have caused it, to, well, this is what caused it. So, in terms of our understanding of reality, that's the first area where I'm suggesting that religion is less relevant than it was before. Not saying that it's irrelevant, certainly it's not irrelevant to individuals within society, certainly it's not completely irrelevant to society, but science has overtaken religion, and I would argue it in terms of quantum mechanics has overtaken philosophy as the most reliable way of understanding the nature of reality. The second area that I want to touch on is our understanding of morality. And I'm going to suggest that there's good evidence that our sense of right and wrong evolved naturally, that it's a property of our brains, and that evidence is more persuasive than the evidence that it was dictated by a God. It used to be the case when people did believe that that there was, certainly before the theory of evolution, when it was kind of harder intellectually to justify the idea of humans coming about in a natural manner. There was a natural inclination by religious people to attribute morality to the gods that had also been invented to explain reality. And a lot of it was in terms, like in the early days, would have been in terms of just patterns, that people would have noticed patterns of if they did something and something else would happen, that they would attribute a cause and effect that didn't actually exist. And that's happening less and less now. And in terms of morality, I think the difficulty that religion causes to morality, and certainly in secular societies, this is being recognised, is that if you just put aside for a second the idea of religion, let's imagine that nobody believes in religion, and we ask ourselves, what do we mean by morality? And what do we mean by right and wrong? Essentially, it comes down to how we treat other sentient beings. If our actions cause unnecessary suffering, that's bad or wrong. If our actions help sentient beings to flourish, that's good or right. And now that's a very complex equation, because you don't know what the outcomes of your action are going to be, because there's so many interrelated and intermingling effects of your actions. So it's a pretty tricky enough task anyway. Now, what happens when you add religion into the mix is you complicate that task. You make it harder, and, in my opinion, you corrupt the search for morality. Because what you do is you add into the equation, commands and ideas that are not based on the effect of your behaviour on other sentient beings, and that indeed can cause unnecessary suffering to other sentient beings, but you're told that you should do it anyway, because the creator of the universe has told you. It's a pretty compelling reason for a lot of people to override their natural sense of empathy and their natural sense of compassion, and to do things that they wouldn't normally do because they believe that they're being told to do so by the creator of the universe, or by people who are in communication with the creator of the universe. And this idea, and there's a couple of problems in terms of allowing these God-like or God-sourced commands, or indirectly sourced God-sourced commands, to dictate your morality. The first is that different people believe that different gods are telling them that different things are right and wrong, and there's no way to distinguish between, who's right. And the second is, even if you believe in the same God, different people believe that the same God is telling them that different things are right and wrong. As the great theologian Homer Simpson of The Simpsons once said, when Marge was trying to get him to go to church on a Sunday, and he said, "But Marge, what if we pick the wrong religion? Every week we're just making God madder and madder." And that's the difficulty with theological commands, is that they're so personal and so subjective that you can't determine which of them is correct. There's also the question which was raised thousands of years ago by Plato in his dialogue between Socrates and Euthyphro, about whether things that are good, if you assume that morality comes from a God, whether things that a God says is good, whether the God is making the thing good by dictating that it's good, or whether the God is pointing out that something is good based on some other criteria. And the difficulty that causes for the religious approach to morality is that if you believe that the God causes things to be good simply based on a whim, based on no other criteria, then morality is arbitrary. And if, on the other hand, the God is using some criteria to determine what's right and wrong, then you don't need the God. You can just try to identify the criteria directly. So even if you believe that there is a God, there are difficulties in claiming that that God is a source of morality. And more people are recognising that as the generations go by. How am I going to time? Because that's going to be... Okay, that's fine, yeah. More and more people are recognising that as generations go by, and as humans move from the morality that most animal species have of defending the tribe and protecting the tribe, to a more evolved sense of morality that involves also recognising the dignity of individual members of the tribe, and indeed of other sentient beings, and the rights that flow from that. If you read any of your kind of sacred texts, you'll find passages in them that are you recognise intuitively are good. Love thy neighbour as thyself in the Christian Bible, although that has come from pre-Christian. It's not a Christian idea, but I mean it's there. Good Samaritan stories, etc. Similarly, in the Quran, there are a lot of morally good pieces about being opposed to slavery and being kind to people, being kind to parents, being kind to the weak, etc. But also in each of those books there are passages that, and I'll put it no stronger than this, there are passages that even a religious person finds difficult ethically. Whether it be in the Christian Bible stoning a man to death for gathering sticks on the Sabbath, or whether it be the way that women are treated, or other factors in the Quran. And there are passages that, however you explain them away, whatever your justification for saying, well, it meant this and this was the context, and that's why it's there, and so on. The very fact that you realise that this is a passage that I have to justify, whereas this other bit, love the neighbour as thyself, be kind to parents, I don't, it's just self-evident. I don't have to sort of justify that. The very fact that you're making that distinction, however you deal with the distinction, shows that you're applying your own morality to those texts. You're not getting your morality from the text, you're applying your morality to the text. And you may choose to justify it to yourself in some way, but by making that distinction, you have shown that you're independently using your own morality. The third area I just want to touch on briefly is a practical one, and that is the impact of secularism on society, and the removal of the undue influence of religion on politics, on the state, has been useful, has been positive throughout the world. There are several practical advantages of secularism. Psychological studies have shown that people are happier in secular liberal democracies, and that a lot of the correlations between religion and societal health show that in secular countries there are lower rates of murder, juvenile mortality, sexually transmitted diseases, teen pregnancies. Secularism brings those problems down, and in the sort of most, perhaps one of the most useful examples is in terms of America, where it's the one country with the one sort of set of laws, although some laws are different within the states. It is the states that are most religious that those problems are highest, and it's the states that are least religious that those problems are lowest. And the final point that I'll make is that there's a very interesting set of studies over the last few decades by being called the World Values Surveys. And they've essentially been, throughout all of the continents, have been mapping world values, and have discovered that that most human values can be mapped onto two scales. One is a personal scale of moving from survival values to self-expression values. Second is a societal scale moving from traditional religious values to secular rational values. And what they're discovering is that when there is investment in health, education, communications technology, there is a shift of individuals moving from survival values towards self-expression values. And the cumulative effect of a lot of individuals doing that is that societies move from traditional religious values to secular rational values. And that's happening at different paces, but consistently as a pattern throughout the world, with the exception in the most recent data that I've seen on it is Africa doesn't seem to be following that pattern, but elsewhere that's what's happening. And that's ultimately the test. That's ultimately the test. Because whatever about your philosophical or theological analysis of what you would like to be the case, it is factually, observably the case that religion is less relevant in modern society. Thank you very much.